All right. So, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a very special guest. This man is honestly one of my, favorite coaches online. I love to kind of, hook up one day in person, whether it's a workout or just a chat. But it's Cody McBroom. Cody McBroom used to be Boom Boom Training, if I'm not mistaken.
Boom Boom Performance.
Boom Boom Performance, that's the one, yeah. Which is honestly a super fun name. I have a buddy whose nickname was Boom Boom, so that always kind of stuck too. But now it's tailored coaching method, which I think is even better. And you talked about the creation of that name, but yeah, Cody McBroom, I love it. If you can just introduce yourself, talk about what got you here, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and it means a lot, dude. Man, who am I? My name is Cody McBroom. My nickname's been Cody Boom Boom McBroom since high school. And I graduated high school an injured soccer player that was overweight. And that is kind of what sent me down the path of fitness. I was going to community college for business, and I just could care less about school, to be honest with you. And it was finally time to try to rehab my knee, and I did not know what I was doing whatsoever, which sent me down a path of really just luck and coincidental circumstances, man. I was going to a community college that was nearby, but it just happened to be the only community college with the top rated health and fitness coach program in the entire country when it comes to not getting your bachelor's or master's, but even top 3 when it came to personal training, including those because of the way they structured the program being more centered towards becoming a coach versus being an expert in kinesiology, which doesn't always apply directly to coaching, right? There's a gap there. I ended up going at that school. A guy happened to walk past me and noticed that I was trying to rehab my knee very poorly, not knowing what I was doing in the college gym. And he happened to be somebody who was a collegiate rower, a strength conditioning coach. He trained Olympic swimmers. He worked with Deion Sanders at one point, and some of the people on the Tampa Buccaneers. He just had such a crazy resume and knew so many people in the industry. For the people who have been in this industry or know some old heads that are just legends. Dan John, Michael Boyle, Greg Cook, Charlie Weingroff. Just so many people that were phenomenal at what they did. And I got to meet a lot of those people because of him. Long story short, I ended up ditching my class one day, popped into his, fell in love, told my parents I was going to just go all in on this fitness thing. Understandably, they said no. They said, you're going to college for something that we know you'll be able to use. You've been training for a month. They didn't tell me I was still overweight, but I was still overweight at the time. It was kind of just like, what are you talking about? So naturally, as a kid that was somewhat irresponsible and a go-getter at the same level, I forged my dad's signature, changed my degree, and went all in on fitness. And I told him 2 or 3 quarters later, as I kept making sure to get the mail before he did. And eventually, obviously he was just like, you know what, you're really passionate about this, keep going. And that's what I did, man. I kept going. I got an internship. All the while was just writing for the school newspaper. I was trying to write for different websites online, just blogging, because that was like pre-social media days. And I ended up getting an internship. Then I got a job. I trained people in person for 6.5 years while writing a blog almost every single week, eventually starting a podcast, getting on Instagram, doing all that. And from the start, my interview for my internship, I said I was going to create an online business. I wanted to build a website that people went to seek out fitness information, like T Nation. That was the example I used back then. Nice. I remember this because back in the day, T Nation was the shit.
Yeah.
It's somewhat clickbaity nowadays, and most people know that, but every once in a while you find a good article on T Nation. And there's a lot of strength coaches that started out writing there, so it was kind of like it was a cool, like, pinnacle point to look at. And I wanted to create a website. He asked me how I'd make money. I said, I have no idea, but I know guys like Nate Green and Jay Ferruggi are doing it. So I'm going to figure it out. And his exact response was, train people every day for 5 years. You'll earn the right and experience to do something like that. 6.5 years later, I quit that job, gave up 100% of my client roster to pursue the online business that I had coined as Boom Boom Performance. And the rest is kind of history, man. Eventually we changed the name because Boom Boom Performance was me, and it didn't describe what we were doing whatsoever. And it was only right for me to change the name to something more descriptive, something that represented my team, my members, the mission, what we're doing, not just who I am. And ultimately, it's for business purposes. It's a phrase that a lot of coaches say when they're describing great coaching. They say tailored coaching or tailored programming, tailored nutrition. So it was a smart move to be able to do that. And I was surprised when my lawyer said we could, that nobody had it yet. And now I run a business called Tailored Coaching Method. We have 9 coaches, not including me, a chief science officer who is a PhD fitness and nutrition researcher. We have our chief operating officer. We have our admin, obviously, and then we have our full-time media guy. So it's grown quite a bit in the last 4 years, because I started it in October 2017. So it's been a fast-paced almost 4 years, but it's my passion, man. I have a daughter who is 3.5 years old. My beautiful wife, Shannon, who actually they just left. They came in to run around the gym for a little bit and just hang out for 20 minutes or so before I got on this. And here we are, man.
That's awesome. Dude, I've heard the origin story on one of your podcasts. We talked about, forging your dad's signature, and you clearly have always had a drive for what you believe in, and like, your content shows it. Anytime you listen to your podcast, like, people can tell when they listen to you that, like, you're all in with this and you want to help people, where, in 2021, everyone's an online coach all of a sudden, whereas, you've been doing this for time. And it's funny, October 2017, mine started October 2016. And I can honestly say it did not have the same kind of start that you did. I was that kid who didn't know what to do. Like, I wanted to play hockey. And then other than that, I was just kind of like, I don't know. I was overweight too. I was trying to get in shape. And then fitness kind of fell in my lap, in a sense, where I had trainers I had a personal trainer who was a bodybuilder. I had trainers who were lacrosse players, hockey players, who kind of helped me see other aspects of this. And it wasn't until, like, I helped myself and my brother kind of go through a transformation that other people took notice and, like, damn, like, do you coach? And I was like, no, but I probably should. And then that's kind of what leapfrogged me into it almost 5 years ago now. It's kind of crazy to feel like it was that. But, your work ethic clearly shows. Like you said, you were blogging every week. So this was back in 2013, 14, when you were doing, like, trying to get on that?
Yeah, because I graduated high school in 2010, and I graduated high school at 17 years old. And then I started college in 2018. And I think I made it to maybe 2 quarters or semesters or whatever it is before I switched my degree. So it was very quick. But I remember my 18th birthday. I have a summer birthday. That's when I was like, had my birthday in the middle of summer, and I was like, dude, something's got to change, because I was 50 pounds overweight at that point. And that's when I started my journey, when I was 18 years old. So that would have been 2010 into 2011 when I actually started, like, pursuing this in college. And then by 2012, I had an internship and so on and so forth.
It's been a 10-year journey, essentially, from this point. Yeah,
exactly.
I can't picture you 50 pounds overweight, man. I don't see it.
It's crazy, man. I was always, if you ask my mom, I was husky. It's one of those things, I was always the husky kid in my group, and I was always just a little chubbier. And it was never like, I was definitely insecure. Like, I didn't take off my shirt. I usually skipped the lake and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until sophomore year of high school, I tore my meniscus in soccer. And at this point, actually, it was right after I started leaning out, because I started getting really into soccer. I made varsity as a freshman. And it was only me and one other person that made varsity as a freshman. So I was really good at soccer. Played a lot. My brother was on the team too. He was a senior. I was a freshman. And then sophomore year, I tore my meniscus as I was the leading goal scorer for the first half of the year. Sophomore, it was cool. And then I tore my meniscus. I was out that year. I rehabbed, recovered, and then I tore my ACL in the same knee the next season. And then, I ended up tearing my meniscus again, actually, in 2018, because it was already torn again. I didn't know I actually had it torn for like 4 years.
Holy shit.
When I went in, because I was rolling out of bed to get my daughter, and it just snapped all the way. And they were like, yeah, you've had a buck handle tear. And so it was basically flipping in and out, and I would pop my knee and pop it back into place. And it was gnarly, man. But essentially those surgeries set me back. And that's when I started gaining weight. So the first one I gained probably like 20-ish pounds, got back in soccer, maybe started losing a little bit of weight, and then tore my ACL. And then it just piled on, and just partying. And, so I ended up getting probably to like 210. I think I'm 5'9". And then but I had no muscle. I hadn't weight trained a day in my life at that point ever, just soccer. And then I dropped from 210 all the way down to like 155, 160. And that's when I was like, okay, now I'm skinny. I need to build muscle. And I got really into lifting weights. So it was kind of like all the wave of things.
Yeah. You're about 170-ish now?
Yeah.
That's solid. Yeah. 210. Yeah. I can't picture that with you. That's unreal.
It's hard for me to picture, honestly. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's funny, man. Yeah, I want to talk about, like, I have a family, I have 2 kids. Now we have a puppy, which is, just adds another layer and everything. How have you been able to balance your own fitness with the business? Because you got the team now too. How has that journey been over the last, your daughter's 3?
3.5. Yep.
Yeah. How's that journey been since then?
It's been a journey, man. I mean, I'm the first to admit that it wasn't easy. It still isn't easy. It's definitely something I've gotten much better at now. And I think there's a few things. Part of my personality trait is um, there's 2 things I'm like somewhat obsessed with. One of them is personal development. So if I'm not constantly working on myself to be better for the people around me, to be better for my business, to be better for my fitness, like I almost can't live with myself. Like I always have to be doing something, reading something, and it's just part of me. And it's never been something that is obsessive to the point of negativity. It's always been a positive thing, and it affects people around me. So part of that is communicating with my wife all the time. Like, what can I be doing better? Where can I be more for you? And sometimes to her, she's like, you need to chill, you're fine. And then other times she'll just be straight up with me. She's a blunt person. She'll be like, this is exactly where you need to fix or work on. But man, the first 2 years, especially year and a half of my daughter being around, I was struggling with being present. I was struggling with managing my time. I was struggling being there for them. And more so for my wife, because, for the first year, especially, my daughter didn't really need me. She needed my wife. She needed milk. She needed to be cuddled. She needed to be all of that with her. And my wife stays home. So she needed her mom more than she needs her dad. They get to a certain point where then it's like they can run, play, wrestle. Now dad comes in a little bit more
Yeah.
often, but it was hard, man. My wife needed me more than I was there, to be completely honest. And it was hard because when we found out my wife was pregnant, that was the moment where I quit my job. I was like, dude, this is my chance. So I spent 2 to 3 months transitioning my clients out just to be respectful of the gym owner and not burn bridges. So, 3 months into my wife's pregnancy, I was like kind of going all in. And then as soon as I really left the gym, I just went all in. And in a matter of 6 months, the company exploded because I was just putting so much work and effort into it. So by the time my daughter was here, dude, I didn't even know what a managed schedule was. I was
Yeah.
just going at full pace. And so it was really hard until about my daughter being 1. I started, I had my assistant full time. I got another coach. I started really understanding how to delegate things better. And as an entrepreneur, it's hard to let go sometimes. So like letting go of things.
For sure.
And I think when my daughter was about 2, I started really getting the hang of it. And I started getting better about it. And it's like, okay, like, babe, what time do you want me home? Not like, what time can I be home? Like, what time do you want me home? And she said 5. She's like, I feel like that's normal. Blakely goes down by 8. Now she's going down like 8:39. That gives me 2 hours with her, gives me a little bit of a break, dinner. Like, cool. Now I just figure everything else out of my schedule to make sure that I am done by 5. So what does that look like? And for a while, it was like, I got to wake up at 5 a.m. And if that means I'm sleeping 5.5 hours a night, I'll do it because I care about my family more than my sleep, which isn't always the best decision. But for a temporary period of time, that's what I did. Now I sleep until 6:30, sometimes 7, and I get more sleep because once I realized how much had to get done, I started looking at what needs to be delegated. What do I need to give people raises to do more of? How can I hand this off and create systems around this, become more efficient about this, which is the second thing that I'm semi-obsessed with, and that's efficiency.
Yep.
How can I do this better? How can I do this faster? How can we create a system around this? And that applies to our clients. It applies to their fat loss. It applies to my schedule. It applies to everything. I mean, even to the point of putting reminders in my calendar to do nice things for my wife or for my family or anything, planning days to go visit my mom, anything like that. Because for some people, they look at it, it's like, that's sad. You need a reminder. And I'm like, I would rather not reflect or worry about how sad it is and worry about just fucking doing it to make the people happy around me. And that means I'm going to put a reminder on my schedule,
Yeah.
So there's a lot with that, but ultimately it's really just constantly trying to personally develop, constantly trying to be efficient, having mentors in my life. I've never not had a coach that was like a life coach / business coach. There's always been a mentor in my life. The one that I hire right now is somebody I've known for 7 or 8 years. And he just never did this kind of thing until a couple of years ago. And as soon as he said he was doing it, I jumped all over it. Now he actually does personal development for my entire team. And I don't know many companies that actually pay a personal development coach to work with every single individual on their staff, it's an investment, but it makes them such better human beings outside of what they do for me that it's worth it, but, so yeah, man, I mean, a little bit of a rant, there was a lot there, but I think ultimately it's just this constant journey to be better personal development wise, and then be more efficient. Cause the more efficient I can be, the more I don't have to sacrifice. And I think that's ultimately what everybody thinks you have to do. You know, it's like, I got into this and it's like, oh, well, now you're having a kid, so you got to sacrifice this. Or like when somebody's pregnant, it's like, oh, say goodbye to sleep. And it's like, okay, well, how can I optimize my body or health or sleep to make sure I don't have to sacrifice that? Why do I have to just say I'm never sleeping again for the rest of my life, you know? Or why do I have to say like I can't run a company and have a kid or be present with my family? Like why is balance have to do with time and not energy given, you know? And just questioning all these things and kind of directing it my own way ultimately led to being able to find my own balance and making sure everybody is happy. And it wasn't easy, but I think now we're finally at a place where me and my wife can look at each other and say we're very, very happy, and content's not the right word, because I think I'm always chasing more, but we're very fulfilled with where everything is at now.
Yeah, that's big, man. Yeah, you dropped a lot of golden nuggets there. And it's true. I find even if you're an entrepreneur or not, I think people just like accept things because it's the norm. And that's why like I've loved listening to your podcast, reading your stuff, because you're not about accepting, because you're always about personal development. Something I've been trying to do more consistently is to read, really dive into more personal development stuff. But again, that's where my hard part is the balance between being present with the family, spending more time, as I call it, the dungeon down here where my gym and my office is, and having that, especially with, you know, a near 5-year-old and an 8-month-old and my wife, which I never want to neglect. It's busy. How do you stay present? You know, like as a coach, you know, as an entrepreneur, like nobody cares about our business the way we do, right? How do you stay off your phone? How do you not respond to any messages? If you think of a post, you do jot it down quickly. How do you stay in the moment with your family?
Yeah, this has been a huge battle. And I think a big part of it again is like, I got to give kudos to my mentor helping me. He also coaches my wife too. So this guy is like,
Nice.
he's crushing it with the boom boom family. I mean, but he's just such a good person. But being able to have better communication with her has helped, because number one, if she calls me out on not being present in the moment, I get defensive. I can't help it. It's just my reaction. I try to work on it. But if we can communicate about that when it's on a separate occasion, we can both go, hey, like if you catch me not being present, just hold on to that. And then when we're in a different moment, bring it up and be like, hey, I noticed that, you know what I mean? And then now I can reflect and go in a non-defensive way, go, fuck, okay, you're right. I did do that. Let me work on that. You know, we've done things in the past where it's like phone on the counter, you know, if we go on date night, phones in the purse, no matter what, like that's
nice.
key. And as you know, when you have kids, you got to have one phone ready and available. So like a lot of times if we're out and doing stuff and about, we just have her phone on ring and make sure do not disturb, because hers is going to go off if the babysitter's calling. Mine's going to go off every single time a notification happens, which is rule number one in staying present and not letting your phone or your notifications control your presence and your energy, is keeping your phone on do not disturb 24/7, not on a timer, not on, if it's always on silent and it's always on do not disturb, you check it when you're ready to check it. And you have a very, very scarce list of favorites, because those favorites are going to get through the do not disturb when they call, and you have a rule with the people on those favorites. For those people, there are people who an emergency arises, those people might call me, and the rule is call me twice if it's actually an emergency. If I don't answer, I definitely saw it, I'm choosing not to answer, and it's not because I don't want to talk to you, it's because I'm busy and I have to stay focused. And so like with my wife, she knows if I answer your call, it's going to distract me and take me away from what I'm doing. If it takes me away from what I'm doing, I'm not going to get off work on time, or I'm going to get off on time with things left to be done, and that's going to distract me when I'm home. Right? She probably doesn't fully get it because she's not an entrepreneur. But if I can get her to just accept it and understand from my point of view, then she'll accept it. She'll call me twice if it's an emergency, you know, and that's happened once ever. And it actually happened when she was pregnant. And this has been a rule of ours for a long time. She understands, I understand, it just works. Right? So I have that conversation with my dad, with my mom, the only people that are on that list. And then from there, a big thing too is when you're time blocking throughout the day, and when you're talking to clients, remembering that like nothing is so unbelievably important that it needs to be answered right now. Right. Nice. And a lot of times coaches make it very, very important to, you know what I mean? So like if I have an idea for a post, I'll take a note. If I'm on a time block and my alarm goes off because the time block is done and I'm like 3/4 of the way, this task is not more important than the next task. So my job is to close the laptop, pick it up on my next time block.
Dude, yeah, that's a tough one, man. Yeah.
Very tough. But if you don't, it gets into the next one, it gets the next one. And then one of two things happens. Either A, you leave something completely out, or B, you end up working late, which pulls you away from your family. And then that's gonna affect you way worse in the long run, because the guilt, the emotions, the stress at home, like that stuff weighs on you. And then you go into work the next day, you just can't even think, because the whole like happy wife, happy life thing, it's 100% true. The person you care about the most is going to be on your mind, so that's a big one, is just sticking to those time blocks. And then remembering too, like if a client emails you, a client texts you, whatever, they'll be okay. They're not dying. They just want to know, what's the better option? Is it white rice or brown rice? And you can tell them tomorrow. And oftentimes I say, hey, like I didn't get that, I was off the clock. What did you end up going with? And see what they say.
Nice.
If they give you a good answer, it's like, that's awesome. That's exactly what I would have done. That means you're learning. I'm really proud of you. You're actually instilling autonomy in them. If you constantly handhold them and give them the answer, you're actually not teaching them much. So sometimes it's actually more beneficial to just leave it. But I have my hours, man. Like after it hits 5, I'm done. The only thing I do after 5 is I will, if I have calls that go over, which usually they don't ever, but sometimes I'll call like 4:30 on my way home. Maybe I'm a few minutes late because I don't want to hang up with them in person. Nothing crazy. But I will occasionally, like I go on a walk every night by myself at night. Once the daughter's down, I just go walk around the neighborhood. Sometimes I answer DM questions on my walk, and I don't really consider that work because I'm just having fun, just answer questions. Like I'm going on a walk, and that's it. But outside of that, like I just don't go on there. If a post goes out, it's already created, already scheduled. That's a done deal. I don't have to think about it. It's mindless. And that goes into the time blocks. I create posts 2 weeks in advance. So I just have like 20 posts just waiting. So when I do go post, just click done, and then I can get off Instagram instead of scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little things here, but I mean, dude, you can create inbox folders in your inbox. You can pause your inbox when you need to pause it. You have, I have like journal practices. I have time block practices. I have in between like breathing and meditation and walking drills to do between tasks to refresh my brain. And this comes down to getting kind of obsessive about personal development and efficiency, man. And it's a lot of little cheesy things that add up in the long run and make you way more efficient. And if you're more efficient, I truly believe you can be more present at home, because that's ultimately what it is. If you're not efficient and you get distracted at work, you go home and you're distracted at home because you have stuff to do. So understanding that you can leave it for tomorrow, understanding that you can finish time block without finishing the task, understanding that you're an entrepreneur, you never finish the to-do list. It's literally endless. So it's like getting obsessed with it is just, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I've done it, but all of these things come down to communicating and becoming more efficient during your day so that you can go home and you can just be present, and I think that's ultimately it sounds very simple, and it is. It's just not easy to do for a lot of people. And that's where, like I said, my coach, accountability, making sure I'm communicating, making sure I'm doing the shit that I say I'm going to do and using the tactics properly. That's ultimately what it's about.
100%. Yeah, you're like the world's most disciplined man. That's where I like time blocks, but at the same time, like you said it, you can finish the time block without finishing the task. Like to me, I've always had a hard time where it's like, yes, I have the time block, but it's the task that like needs to get done. And I'm very guilty of it. I'm very guilty of going over time blocks or letting work drip into the evening because I get distracted during the daytime. Like 100%, that's me. That's something I've been fighting with for so long now. And it's more just getting disciplined and just getting down to nitty gritty and doing that stuff. But that's great. You shared a lot of golden nuggets there. And communication is huge. Like I'm super lucky. Like my wife's probably going to be staying at home once Matt leaves up, and we've talked about it and we'll continue to talk about it to see where she's at, but she's been my biggest supporter. Like I wouldn't be able to do what I do without her. So like being communicative and asking her, like, do you want me here at these times? Like, what would you like my schedule to look like? As an entrepreneur, it's tough because, like you said, we can work on our business all the time, like 24/7. There's something else that we can always do. But it's not about that, right? It's about doing what what will help the business grow, but fulfill life in other aspects as well.
Yeah. I think it's huge, man. And it's the same thing with my wife. I remember having the conversation with her of like, hey, like, she's pregnant, and I come home and I'm like, hey, I'm going to quit the job at work, and I think I'm going to really push this online thing, and I want you to not go back. You're on maternity leave. I want you to not go back. And she was like, I'm going to support you. I want you to push. I want you to do this online thing, but I'm not committing to not going back. Not because I don't think you could support it, but because I'm independent and I don't need you to do that for me. And I was like, okay. Then she saw my daughter's face in the hospital and immediately was like, I'm not going back. So, which was what I wanted. But I think like you need that support system at home, and your environment's got to be supportive of it. And I also think too, the communication piece to get them to understand better, because if you're not an entrepreneur, it is hard to understand entrepreneur tendencies quite a bit, Same thing if anybody has ever dated a bodybuilder. It's like there's certain things that people are just like, what are you doing? Like, I don't get it. What's the point? Like, why are you measuring that chicken? Chicken's healthy. I don't get it. And it's like,
Yeah.
just don't worry about my food scale. And, I won't worry about what you like to do. But it's communication, man. And the self-discipline thing, I think can shoot you in the foot. A good example of that is, I was like on the 5:30 a.m. kick for a long time. And it was like, the sooner I get up, the more shit I can get done, which to an extent is true. But as my daughter's bedtime went later, so did ours, because I still want time with my wife at night, just us two. And so her bedtime went from 7 to 8 to 9, and where it is now, and my wake up time stayed at 5, but my bedtime went from 9 to 10 to 11, And so the Aura Ring has just kicked my ass, and I'm just reading, I'm like, fuck. So actually just recently I was like, you know what? Because for the longest time, when you're very self-disciplined, you just go, I don't care.
Yeah, I got this. Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to test out waking up at 6:37 instead. Give myself an hour and a half extra sleep. And I haven't got off work late since. Why is that? Is because I'm more well rested and I'm more efficient throughout the day. So there's times where the self-discipline needs to take a back seat, but I do think it's an underrated tool. A lot of people ask me productivity tips, and I'm like, put your phone in the drawer of your desk on do not disturb.
It's true.
It's the easiest fucking thing, but it's self-discipline to be able to not pull it out when you're bored or you want to check Instagram or whatever. Nothing is so important that it needs your attention right now, unless it's a loved one calling you 2 times in a row. And that's the rule.
That's it. That's the golden rule. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about the Aura Ring, actually, because you've mentioned it a couple times. What's I don't want to say sell me on it, but like, what is it about the Aura Ring? Have you found it has a positive impact on your health and how you operate?
Yeah, I do. The reason I bought it is, so one of my good friends, Sam Miller, kept trying to convince me to get it. Probably like over a year or two ago. And I was just like, nah, bro, I'm good. Like, I don't wear rings. And then like, obviously I had a wedding ring, which is, I just replaced the wedding ring with it because my wedding ring was black, looks the same. But I have eczema, so I have sensitive skin, and the Apple Watch I would just break out. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of this. And I got a G-Shock that counted steps. Same thing. That's all I wanted, was I just want a step count. Same thing happened, the silicone. So I was finally like, all right, I'll get the Oura Ring and I'll just be able to, track my steps. But then the sleep thing was just so massive, man. I mean, being able to see, one of the big things for me was seeing how long it takes me to fall asleep, because there's a sweet spot. If it takes you too long, you're restless. If it takes you, like, if you just fall asleep immediately, you're burnt the fuck out, right? You need sleep. And I always prided myself in like, oh, when I hit the sack, my wife gets pissed. We're like late and watch TV. I'm out, done. And so as I'm tracking my latency, how long it takes me to fall asleep, most days, dude, there was plenty of days where it'd be literally 2 minutes, and a sweet spot is 15 to 20 minutes. And it would be 2 minutes, and it'd be a red flag. Like, you are falling asleep so fast that you are over fatigued. You need to slow down.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, I thought it was a good thing that I just crashed right away.
Me too.
Nope, you're too damn tired, dude. So that was huge, because it was like, okay, like maybe I'll pay attention to that a little bit more. And then I'm like, well, I'm in bed for 7 hours, but then I look and I'm only getting 5 hours and 45 minutes because I don't sleep the whole time. I'm like, fuck, I didn't realize that. Then I saw how many times I woke up to pee, and I'm like, man, I'm going to stop drinking diet soda at fucking 9 p.m., And so I started changing all these little things, and ultimately my sleep just got better. I paid more attention to my fatigue, my signals of stress and biofeedback that I push on my clients all the time. And yeah, I just feel better. Generally just feel better, for sure.
I love it. Yeah. And that's the thing too, like, data is everywhere in terms of, you got the ring, fitness data, information, but you're taking the data and applying the changes that's the key here, right? And everyone can read an article or a blog and say, yeah, they know the thing, but until they apply it, it's essentially useless. So you've been able to kind of take the sleep patterns and or lack thereof and change things. So like, what did you do when you saw like that sleep was like, you're falling asleep too fast? Like, what was the first thing you changed?
First thing I changed there is honestly talking to my wife and going, all right, I just want to go up to bed a little bit sooner.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's lay in bed and watch TV a little bit. So then, like, and that should probably save maybe 20 minutes, but still it was like 20 minutes. Cool. And the big thing was just, man, I just set my alarm later. There was just one day where I was like, all right, my alarm's not going off 5:30. It's going off at 6:30. I just got to do it, because if I lay in bed for 7 and I only get 6, that means if I lay in bed for 8, I'll get 7. Right. And chronically, it was like, I was laying in bed for just under 7. And I was never getting over 6 hours of sleep, which was less than I thought. When people ask me, I'm like, yeah, I get like 6 to 7. And I'm just, I look at the clock before I like lay down, and then I look at the clock when I wake up. That's what I was using. That's what most people do. But I just wasn't getting that sleep. So the biggest thing has been literally just changing it to 6:30, and I wake up, and The thing I noticed most is I went from drinking 3 cups of coffee in the morning to 1, and not because I
Nice.
love drinking coffee from a social perspective, because I love coffee,
Mhm.
but I just would drink a cup and I would just be working and working and working. Then I just realized, like, holy shit, hours have gone by. I've only had 1 cup of coffee, and it was like, man, that is
It's a
huge.
big deal.
Yeah, training has been better too. I have noticed that as well. And this could be just proper reverse dieting or not, but I've increased my carbs by like 65 grams, I think. And I haven't done anything different. Same program, same carb, like nothing different besides just more sleep. And I'm not saying that sleep is burning that many more calories. I think I'm just better utilizing my
I was
nutrition.
gonna say, just
Training
everything's just,
harder.
yeah, flowing better. Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. And in perfect segue, because one of your posts, I think it was yesterday's post or 2 days ago, was talking about biofeedback and people who are chronically dieting. How do you kind of tackle biofeedback with clients? Do you go
Yeah.
one by one down the threshold? How do you do it?
Yeah. We somewhat tailor it to the person, no pun intended, but, we're tracking everything. At this point, our trackers and our formulations just look really sick, and they're really, really smooth and just easy to use because we've learned and got so much feedback now, and we've tweaked and adjusted and even brought in like Excel experts to make what we want to make.
Nice.
But just tracking the main things on a daily basis: sleep, stress, mood, motivation. And then sometimes it's hunger and craving, sometimes it's digestion. That fifth one kind of depends on the person, recovery, whatever. But if I can see how many hours you're sleeping, I can see if you're motivated to train and eat right and follow your goals in the morning. So when you wake up, on a scale of 1 to 5, how motivated are you to just be better, to just do you? That's a huge sign of diet fatigue and overtraining, if you're not motivated, because the central nervous system will shut down motivation real quick. Obviously, performance and recovery, we have to have some kind of aspect of that. Like, are you recovering from what we're doing, both dietary and training wise? Even if we're not training you and we're just doing nutrition, we still want to know, because we're going to influence that.
Mhm.
Uh, and then stress levels. Where are your stress levels at? How stressed are you? So on and so forth. And if we have all these things, I can essentially just know, are we heading in the right direction? Is there some red flags? Do we need to take a diet break soon? Do we need to pull back training soon? Or do I just need to ask you, hey, and this is just a coaching tip, is there anything going on in your life? Like, is there
Mhm.
any outside? Because it's not always diet fatigue. Sometimes, like, man, we're only 10 weeks in, we're not in a huge deficit, protein's high enough, your training's not crazy, but like your biofeedback's been shit the last 2 weeks. What's going on? Oh, you're going
Yeah.
through a divorce. Like, let's talk. Being a transparent, open, and trustworthy coach is huge, because there's things outside of training nutrition that will greatly affect training nutrition. And those are times where you go, hey, like, we can push through this diet, but I would highly recommend that we pull back into maintenance just for a little bit. Like, let's get through this rocky area in your emotional, personal life, and then we'll jump back into the diet. It's not going to regress you. It's just going to put the pause button on things. And that's huge. But essentially, we're tracking some of these on a daily basis, along with macros and weight for most clients. Obviously, there's some clients who don't track macros. Most of ours do. And for those who don't know how, or think that it's going to be obsessive, or that they can't handle, or whatever, we usually just educate them on how they actually do have full ability to do so.
Mhm.
And then we have a weekly, obviously, as well, which is all of the above and then some, but on a weekly basis. And then some questions, like, just surrounding, how are things going? Like, what do you want to improve on? How can I help you more? What are your thoughts of this week? Like, really getting them to reflect, partially just for them, because I want you to reflect on everything you're doing,
Sure.
and partially on me. Um, and then there's review processes during the journey as well, where we take a break, every 3 months or so, and we go, hey, let's reflect back. And we're like really pinpointing the things that they might be missing. Because there's plenty of clients who, they're crushing it, but maybe their weight's not changing,
Mhm.
especially if the weight might not actually even be the goal. And because the weight's not changing, they neglect to see the positives and all the wins, which is very,
Yes.
very common.
Yep.
But if we can sit back every month or every few months and have like a review and go, hey, look at all these fucking wins you're accomplishing, ignore the scale. Like, because that's not the only thing, nor is it the thing that we're trying to even accomplish. But all these things are part of the big picture that we're after. You're killing it. I applaud you, and then we can move forward
Yeah.
and just keep them adherent.
I love it. And a big part of that is just setting expectations from the get-go, right? In terms
Yeah.
of like letting them know what may or may not happen with the scale, and it's really not the end all be all. But you brought up something interesting that I love your take on it. And how would you explain to someone who is almost like a beginner what not recovering looks like? Because a lot of people might not understand, and they might just think, oh, I'm not pushing hard enough, or I need to push harder, when in fact you said, like, you got to pull back. How do you explain that to kind of a beginner trainee?
Yeah. I mean, there's some obvious signals and then there's some not so obvious signals. I typically find that the obvious ones hit beginners more, and the not so obvious ones are the ones that we really have to have hard talks with the advanced people with. But for beginners, the easier, the simple ones to notice is number one, obviously DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness,
Yep.
which can be lack of proper nutrition to fuel proper recovery, or it could be just too much training, and you're not going to recover from that because you don't have the experience level to do so. There's some people who have the experience level to do so, but unless you go into a high surplus, you're just not going to recover from that much training. And if your goal isn't weight gain, then you're not going to be in a high surplus. So we just have to recognize DOMs. For beginners, it might have nothing. I don't care how much food you eat, you're just doing too much. So delayed onset muscle soreness usually kicks in about 36 hours afterwards, I would say, about, a day and a half, 2 days later. And if it lingers for longer than 3 or 4 days, I mean, you're just doing too much.
You do
That's
too
kind of my
much.
rule of thumb. If you're a beginner or if you're an intermediate advanced and you just change programs, you swap in a new thing and you don't get sore at all, I actually think you're not pushing hard enough. You're not doing enough. Or, yeah, I just don't think you're pushing to the threshold because muscle soreness is an indication of muscle damage. Muscle damage doesn't directly mean muscle growth. They've explained this quite extensively because you can absolutely grow without muscle damage. However, if you're never experiencing muscle damage, I have a hard time believing you're tiptoeing into the threshold that's going to create muscle growth. And even if you're a female listening who just wants fat loss and you're like, I don't care about getting bigger, it still applies to you because that signal is going to be the same thing when we're trying to lose fat. But if you're never getting sore, to me, that just means you're not pushing the boundaries, you're not challenging yourself enough. You're not probably not reaching a level of intensity or RPE or RIR that is actually significant enough or close enough in proximity to failure to actually create any kind of stimulus. Now, if you start a program, let's say it's a 4-week block and you're sore as hell every week, you're just doing too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're sore week 1 and you're like, oh my God, it's going to be a good program. And then week 2, 3, 4, you're not sore and you're just progressing. That's perfect.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And when I say all week, if I do legs on Monday and I'm sore, my legs are sore until Wednesday, but then my upper body's sore from Wednesday to Friday, like that's great. You know what I mean? It's different areas. But if I do legs on Monday and my quads hurt until the next Monday, you just did too much.
Yeah, it's a
You went
problem.
overboard. Um, and sometimes if somebody's really dialed in, they can look at that and go, man, I calculated my volume. I've done it. Like I'm not overtraining. Well, at that point, like you have other stressors in your life that are not allowing you to recover fully, right? Or your nutrition isn't on point. But that's the most obvious one for a lot of beginners to notice. And I would say joint pain and stuff goes with that too, aches
Okay.
and pains in general. One that's not so obvious is like depression would be an extreme version of this, but moodiness, man, like, and
Really?
especially advanced individuals, because if you really fry the nervous system by just training too much and going to overtraining, you're legitimately somewhat depressed. And I've experienced this. I actually experienced this right when we had my daughter because I didn't change my training schedule. I had a garage gym. I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm pushing through this. I'm a fit dad. And I just, with stress, sleep, and honestly, the stress of being a new parent mentally, not because I was I was pretty damn busy because the business was exploding. I was not getting as much sleep, but there's like this like constant paranoia of, are they okay? Did they
Yeah. Oh
fall?
yeah.
Are they crying? Are they dying? Are they like, did they fall? It's like
Yeah.
nonstop paranoia. But I legitimately was like having questions of myself of like, dude, why am I so sad and just moody and just, I just like don't have a feeling, like I just feel gray.
Yeah.
Like I have a great business. I just had a beautiful daughter. What is going on? And it was literally like I literally jumped into a program, funny enough, from T Nation that I use, Christian Thibodeau program that I love. And I love Christian Thibodeau. I know him personally. He's a great dude, super smart, but it's a very, very intense, full body, 5 day a week. Like
Holy shit.
you don't go below 80 to 85% of 1 rep max. Like it's like a full body compound circuit and it's a blast, dude. It's so fun. And I remember doing it when I was like 21 and my lifts exploded. And I was like, I needed a surge of motivation to train hard again. I was like, this is it. I'm going to go back to this program. It's going to be fun. And the first week was a blast. And then week 2 and 3, I was just sad. And like, but the mood, the depression, the motivation, that kind of feeling is very apparent when you're overtraining. And then immune function. Like if you're getting sick, if
Oh
you're just
yeah.
getting like the sniffles or anything like that, you're going overboard. A
Mm.
good balance is if you're never getting sick, you're probably really strong, and strength training and cardio will boost your immune system and help you quite a bit. But if you're getting sick often, it's because you're just overtraining your
It's too
immune system.
much. Yeah.
Um, But those are the kind of the things that I have clients looking at just to make sure that they're actually fully recovering.
Love that. Yeah, that's really in depth. And that's, you essentially over the last 10 minutes explained the benefits of having a real coach and not just jumping program to program online and finding random things to do. It's like you need, and I tell every new client this in the first call, is like the check-in form is one of the most important parts of this entire process, because you need to look at, what do you think you're doing well and where do you think you need more help? Like, how do you feel about the process and like what's going on with your life? And the clients that are the most open, the most communicative with me do the best, because they let me in, they let me help them. If I have to, push them or lead them, it is what it is. But that process that you just explained is huge, and I'm sure that's why clients of yours see the results they see, because you guys are in the process with your team. You jump in them. I'd love to know, just because I am a solopreneur, what was it like? I'll call it relinquishing control, but what was it like building the team and not doing everything? Because I have a bit of a hard time, not controlling every piece of the puzzle.
At first you almost like, I don't want to say you have to, because I don't think it's necessarily like something you should do. For most people, you end up doing it. And I think it's like, you end up not really giving up any of the control. And at some point, somebody just does something without you realizing it, and it goes really well. And then you kind of get a slap in the face of like, okay, dude, you're not that good. Like you're not the only one who can do this. Because at first I brought on my assistant, and it was basically like, I just need you to help me with my schedule. Just make sure, like, when leads come in, you're setting up my calls. When I'm doing podcasts, you're scheduling my interviews, and like sending out client gifts, like just simple stuff. Right. But she took one look at my schedule and was like, you're just chaos. Like, this doesn't make any sense. I was like, you can do whatever you want with it, just as long as I can read it. And it was so much smoother and better, and I got so much more efficient. That was kind of my first insight of like, okay, like maybe there's certain things that I should let other people do. Then I hired a coach, and I just was like constantly looking over their shoulder and micromanaging to make sure everything was perfect. But the amount of great feedback I got from their clients told me that, like, dude, you can let them be. You trained them. They were a client of yours. Like, they use your systems, methods. There's really nothing bad that can happen here, and they have access to you. So at a certain point, you got to kind of just leap. Like, people always ask, like, what's the best way to get consistent? You just got to be fucking consistent. And they're like, well, then how do I do that? It's like, you just do it. Like, there is no secret, right? Well, how do I get better at taking risk or starting things or beginning a journey thing? You just take action. How do I get better at speaking in front of crowds? You just speak in front of crowds.
Yeah,
there's always a moment where the answer to you doing what you need to do is literally just, for lack of better terms, nutting up and doing it. It's just being like I had a mentor that always said, dude, man up and do it. And there's no tactic, there's no hack, there's no strategy. And this goes for everybody. It's just literally just going, fuck, it's probably going to be uncomfortable. I might fall flat on my face. Kind of scared right now, but I'm just going to fucking do it. And you just do it. Right. And yeah, you could go, well, I want to get better at public speaking, so I'm going to start with a Facebook Live. Okay, cool. That is a great strategy. Maybe you go to improv. I did that too. Unbelievably embarrassing, but by the end of it, it's
scary as hell. Yeah.
Scary as hell, but it works really well to get better at public speaking. And then I also think you can read things that help, like the E-Myth is amazing. That's a great book to show you, like, hey, you are just one piece of the puzzle. And unless you empower the other pieces, you're going to be playing all the roles. You're going to be the technician and the manager and the CEO, entrepreneur. And you don't want to do all those, because then you're just moving very slow and inefficiently, and you're just unhappy. You got to separate yourself. Rocket Fuel is another great one that talks about basically there's the visionary and then the integrator. The visionary is somebody like me. I'm creating the vision. I'm creating the movement. I'm getting the people to tribe and follow and crowd around and start this movement. I have the visions and the ideas, but I have people beneath me, not literally, but with me, implementing and integrating and helping me create and bring them to life, because I can't do enough of the visionary stuff and all the creation. I need help there. And then another good book, The One Thing. I've read that probably 4 or 5 times, just realizing, like, what is your one thing? Calendar and scheduling and organization is not my one thing. It's just not. Creating PDFs and the design behind that's not my thing. But I can tell you exactly what that PDF needs to look like, what that infographic needs to look like, what the book layout is going to be. But I need somebody to bring the design to life. And that's like Travis. He's very, very good at that. But if I told him, I was like, hey, can you make a post on reverse dieting? He'd be like, dude, what? I don't I'm literally like, dude, this here, this text, you know what I mean? And then he can bring it to life and do what he needs to do to make it look the way it needs to look. So it's really just recognizing your superpower, and then taking action, just letting go of some shit, and people will do it. And you get to a certain point too where you just can't. You realize you're like, okay, I can't
do it
like,
all anymore.
I'm already too busy. So I either let go or I don't grow, and it's as simple as that.
How'd you end up finding like your assistant and then the assistant coaches that work underneath you with the company and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So assistant was complete luck. I went to high school with her, but I never talked to her a day in my life. She was older than me. We just hang out with different crowds. Um, for lack of a better term, she was an A+ student, ASB, really good. I was not that whatsoever. Different crowds. And she still is. She's not my assistant anymore just because she had her third kid, but her husband is actually still my lifting partner. So he still comes in every day.
Fun. Nice.
But he went to high school with me too. Never talked to him ever in my life. I was moving out of our apartment. So we moved into an apartment, and then found out we were having a baby very shortly after that. So we canceled our lease and bought a house, and the moving truck literally came, grabbed a bunch of our shit and was going. I was like, all right, I got 30 minutes until they get back. I'm going to go get a quick lift in this little apartment gym that I had never stepped foot in. What do you know? Travis is walking, not the Travis Media guy, a different guy, is walking on the treadmill, listening to my podcast, I'm pretty sure, and starts talking to me. He's like, dude, no shit. Like, we listen to your podcast. My wife loves it. She's been trying to like start her journey, but she's on maternity leave because we just had our second kid. I'm a teacher, so there's just no way. And I was like, dude, I've been looking for an assistant. You guys, I trust. I know who you are. All these people online that apply, I just have a trust issue with, because back then I just wouldn't let go of anything. I would. Now I find people online, it's way different. But back then I was just like, I was scared of it. I was like, tell her I want to do coffee with her. So I met her for coffee. She was like, you coach me, I'll do your assistant work. I'm in. And then she was my assistant for like 2 or 3 years. And it was just random, coaches, kind of same thing. Somebody reached out to me and was like, hey, like, I was working for this company and they're actually folding. They're not going to be a company anymore. I'd love to be a part of what you're doing. And I was like, I need another coach. And so I brought her on and she killed it. She's no longer with us either. Same thing. Mom got real busy with kids and she just decided to part ways. But that's kind of how every coach came on board. It was either a client of one of our coaches. It was somebody that I was coaching, somebody I mentored, and essentially bugged me. Like, any person who filled out the application to work for us, and we have hundreds of people that have, they poked me and bugged me and bugged me. And I actually wait for that because I want somebody who's hungry,
That's it.
But yeah, and a big thing that I always tell people, and I think a lot of companies make the mistake of this, and the only reason I'm saying this is because you mentioned it, is none of them are my assistant coach. All of them are nutrition.
Yeah, my mistake. Yeah.
I think, and it's not like, there's a lot of companies who say like, oh, this is my assistant coach. But what that does is it puts me on a fucking pedestal and acts like I'm the shit. I have coaches that have their master's degrees in sports nutrition. They have education levels way beyond me. Do I have more experience? Yeah, probably. I've been coaching for 11 years, but it's one of those things. I always tell people starting companies, like, don't call them your assistant coaches unless they're literally your assistant. Otherwise, you're not empowering them to be the best that they can be, and you're putting a title on them that is to me belittled to the person watching. I'm like, no, my coaches are amazing. Like, they're the shit, and it takes a lot to work with us. So, but it's really just been a lot of it serendipitous. People, and I think this is the thing too, is be loud about what your mission is, man. I've been so loud about it, and I've been so transparent, open, and communicative to people, that the people who work for me, they came to me saying, I want to be a part of this. This is exactly how I feel. This is the same philosophy I roll with. This is the kind of movement I want to be a part of. What do I got to do? And a lot of them I said no, and I just wait to see if they would ask again,
Nice.
And then eventually they keep asking. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Like, let's start a mentorship. Let's do an internship, something like that. But yeah, that's kind of how it all.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, them poking you shows the same drive that you had in the beginning, essentially, which still have, like, but you're a very driven person. You show up on stories every day. Now you got the quotes going. You used to have the walk and talks. So you're always showing up for people, and you are loud about what you're doing. It's good. We need more coaches like that in the industry for sure. I don't want to keep you any longer because I know you have your 5 o'clock cutoff. I'm going to try to stick to my 5 o'clock cutoff too. But I love it. And you already gave me a couple books, because I always ask you about, or would love to ask about books.
I can give more.
I mean, I know you mentioned a couple. So if you had to go one personal development and one fitness, and that can include training or nutrition or both, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for people?
So hard because, like, what's on the top of my mind is always what I've read most recently. Like, I read a book called Limitless. I wouldn't say it's the best personal development book I've ever read, but even just the speed reading aspect alone that I took away from it is already helping me so much. I'm reading a book that I actually saw Stephanie Cohen post, and it's called The Psychology of Money.
Oh
Unbelievably
yeah.
interesting,
Yeah. I have
very
that one
deep.
on. Yeah.
But if I'm thinking like personal development, um, man, like it's so hard because I have so many for different reasons. Like The Alchemist has always been something that's been an amazing book for me because it kind of brings out that childlike inspiration and dream chasing mentality in myself. But then I think of like The Go Giver, and The Go Giver is literally the way I want to be as a person. The Leader Who Had No Title is another one that just instills so much work ethic in you. I love Relentless and Winning by Tim Grover because
Yeah.
it just reminds me and like kind of slaps me in the face and is like, dude, like grind, like go, do not stop. So there's just so many, man. I think if I had to pick one, I probably would pick The Leader Who Had No Title. It's just my favorite story. I'm really big on stories. Like I think they're the easiest ones to read.
Mhm.
Leader Had No Title, Dream Giver, Go Giver, Energy Bus, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. They're all
Yeah.
stories. They're fiction, but they're so good. Whereas like Limitless is facts. It's science about getting your brain to go faster, which is cool, but it's very dry. So you got to like
Yeah.
really pay attention. And then for fitness, I would say the most helpful books in my career have probably been the Muscle and Strength Pyramids. I mean, they just were so well rounded. But my favorite is probably Maximum Muscle Bible by Paul Carter
Oh
in
yeah. Nice. In
Thibodeau.
Thibodeau. Yeah.
It's just a fun book. I mean, the way they break down so many different reps and set schemes, I think when it comes to getting creative with program design, there's nothing that matches that book because, a lot of people, Muscle and Strength Pyramids are great. It gives you the science. It gives you a lot of understanding. But if you don't know how to make things exciting, fun, and challenging, people are going to stick with it. So
Sure.
like blending those two kind of books together is so valuable.
I love it. Those are dope. Definitely. And I have yet to pick up Winning. That's on my list, but Relentless is one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah.
Tim Grover's delivery is just awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the part of the podcast where you can just, plug yourself, what you got going on, if you have anything coming up and where people can find you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I don't have anything coming up. We just coach, man. We just coach. So I got quite a few things. I mean, if you go to tailoredcoachingmethod.com, you'll find it all. I post on Instagram every single day. The podcast is the Tailored Life Podcast. The training app is the Tailored Trainer. Then obviously we coach. We got tons of free content. So if you're just somebody who just doesn't know who I am, you just want to learn and just get free stuff. I mean, we got guides, we have podcasts, we have videos, we have tons of blogs. There's just so much free content for people to learn from. So I would just go to the website, check that out, and just start learning.
Definitely. I'll link everything in the show notes for sure. But no, man, thank you so much for taking the time. This was a great chat. We'll have to do it again someday, hopefully in person or at a seminar or something down the road.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Cody.